Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to the HumanizeHer podcast. I'm your host, Erica Lockheimer.
And I'm your co-host, Elizabeth.
This is truly a movement and also a passion project of mine. We're going to be speaking to amazing women, talking about their success stories, their challenges, their endeavors, and any way that we can support them. We're going to have so much fun learning together. So let's dive in.
Welcome to everyone for joining the HumanizeHer podcast. We're so excited. Today is a very, very special episode. I'm completely honored to be able to kind of swap seats with you for a moment today. We're going to dive deep into the story of the woman behind HumanizeHer and how this came about. So Erica Lockheimer, our host of the show, is now the guest of the show today. I just want to kind of share a little bit of background about kind of how you came to where you are today, where your passion came from, the drive came from, where HumanizeHer started, the ideation phase, but it all starts somewhere way back in your history, right, in your journey. And so we usually have these types of conversations at like 10, 11, 1 a.m.
Yeah, usually that time.
where we're chit-chatting. And so I know your story very well, but I think this is an intimate moment for our community to kind of get to know you and feel even that much more connected. And so I'd love to start with kind of where your journey began as even a child. I know you have some history with your family and how you grew up, and that has influenced quite a bit.
Yeah, and so thank you for having me. That's what our guests say about
You're
having
welcome.
ourselves. So this is quite interesting to be in the hot seat. So I'll be honest, I'm a little nervous, but I'm going to do my best. So I have a lot more empathy for the guests now. But
A little nerves,
a
but
little
it's okay.
nervous, but that's okay. So gosh, where do I begin? I grew up in the Bay Area. I've been in California all my life. I also grew up in pretty humble beginnings. My mother came from 11 brothers and sisters. Actually, was born in Mexico. They also didn't have a lot of means and grew up on welfare in the system. So thank goodness those systems are in place so for people to survive. My father also grew up in a home with single mom. So both of them had single moms. And so when my mom and father had met, one of the things that they're like, okay, when we have children, we want them to be independent, strong women, go to college and all those things. And that's really what was ingrained in me from the beginning. So they're both self-made, never went to college, but they're like, you got to do it. So I knew I had to go down that path. Didn't know quite sure how to do it. So one thing, I just was always really good at math. I enjoy it. My dad was really good at math. I was his tool girl around the house. I was the one that get that Phillips screwdriver or whatever he needed help with. I was that person. And I think he always wanted to be an electrical engineer. I actually know, in fact, he wanted to. But
So he influenced you to kind of go down that path a bit.
yeah, it was a path. He went to City College and took electrical courses, but never was able to finish. He took over a meat company business at the age of 20. I think he was working at a meat company business. So yes, back in the day, you would have Army, or the stations, and you would buy a whole steer, a whole
Quarter of a
cow.
something.
You know
Yeah,
this. You're a
yeah.
hunter. Tell me of the technical. My dad would be disappointed right now, but I would work there, and he would never let me touch any of the knives. So I was always in charge of like packaging the meat. And so
He was a butcher.
I was a butcher's daughter for
Okay.
for a while, and that is how I grew up. But he took over that business at a really young age when it was going under, and so that was his path, and he needed to just make ends meet. So. So that was, I worked really early on as a child. I would do anything. I used to make anything to make $1 around the house. We'd have a timesheet. No, it's seriously.
Like
So you
doing
want to
what?
I would pick anything. Like I was like, Dad, you need shirts that are ironed. I would iron a shirt for $1. I would paint the walls he taught us how to make money early on. And
I bet your
be
mom
independent.
appreciated you helping with the
I
ironing.
think she did. Yeah, she would do her Jane Fonda workouts. Why I do that.
I can so see that knowing your mom.
If you know my mom, yes, the purple leotards and everything.
I
so,
love her.
yeah,
She looks like Dolly Parton for anybody interested.
Yeah.
She's a gorgeous woman. So yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my
So
gosh.
that was part of my interesting childhood. And I have two sisters. I have an older sister and younger sister. So when my dad had all girls, it was even more important for all of us to be very independent, and his brothers had all boys. So his interest, he has a story where he had two brothers, and when the parents divorced, two of the brothers stayed in Ohio, and he went with his mom, who was single, and moved to California. And she didn't even know how to drive a car. She'd never had a job. So she actually started off selling irons in front of Safeway, and that's how. And then she eventually,
So she didn't know how to do those things because she never had to, because she relied on her husband, and then they got
I
divorced,
think
or is that
it was just
kind
it was a well, it was just a different time back then.
Okay.
I mean, you were the homemaker, you were taking care of cooking and doing all these things. I think it was just traditional roles, and then they had broke up. There's a story there that another chapter,
Another
chapter of
episode.
how that all. There's always two sides to that story too.
Yeah.
But he never wanted to leave his mother alone, and so they broke up the family, and he stuck with his mom and they basically helped raise each other at a
Beautiful.
very young age. So so when they had three girls, I was just like, you're gonna figure this out, and you're gonna be independent, and you're not gonna go through all the
Yeah.
stuff that they went through.
So, I mean, your dad had a huge influence on you, and you had mentioned like you were really good at math. You really liked math. Did he say something to you to trigger that, or like how did that come about where you wanted to focus there?
Yeah, so that was the one strength that he said, this will get you through life. That's what he believed in. He's like, just be really great at it. And actually, when I was going through school and the calculator came out, he was always upset that I would use the calculator. We still have these old school math rulers that he would give it to me as a gift, but he's like, that's not the real way to do it.
Now there's
But
calculators
now there's
in
like
our
AI
phone.
and tools. I'm like, but that's a whole another path. But yeah, that was just the one thing that he told me to concentrate on. So I literally looked up to him. I literally would take his advice and be like, that's what I'm going to be really great at. And so I did really well in all my math classes. And just like him, I did horrible in all my English classes.
Yeah.
So in history, people ask me about things. I'm like, I'm not really great at any of that. So
Daddy's girl.
Yes,
For
I
sure.
was. I miss him dearly. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I know. And there's a beautiful story behind that as well. I mean, I know how close you were with him, but
Yeah.
the fact that there was so much influence that he had on you and helped to pave the path for you in this way, it's like he did his ultimate job of setting his daughter up for success, and his daughters, all three
all
of
of
you
us.
are successful in your own
Almost to
right.
the point where we're like, we don't need a man, you know? It's like almost like we don't need anybody. We're fine on ourselves. So we almost like, did he do too much of that?
You're the Rosie, like you can do.
Oh yeah, that's why I'm like, all of that. So he was just really influential, and we put him up on a pedestal. And he wasn't no one's perfect. He wasn't. There's stories there too that we're all not going to go in, but no one was perfect.
Yeah.
He was actually an alcoholic for a long period of time, not home, but he was really there when things turned a different corner, and he basically was more there for me as I got older in life. And my mom then switched. She always helped with the business, but she switched roles. She's another interesting person to talk to. She winded up being a Mary Kay cosmetic director. She's the person that drives the pink Cadillac, and she had to make ends meet. We almost lost our house. It was a time where we'd have a ton of money, and we were, humble beginnings, but they're self-made, and we would be shopping at Nordstrom's, and then all of a sudden next year, almost losing the house, things had happened. My mom's now trying to make ends meet, and we're at the dollar store getting clothes. I mean, it was just this constant, like one extreme to the other, but they somehow always made things work. And it's still the same house that my parents have since 1975. So so we powered through. And so I literally took the advice. I was really good at math, and I had a teacher one day. She's like, hey, you're really, really good at math. Why don't you try going into the computer lab?
This is in high school?
This is in high school. So this was 1990, maybe 1990. And I remember going into the lab, and this is kind of interesting. There's like all these like gray box computers, just interesting. And so we started, not many people, maybe some people out there know the programming language, but it was Pascal programming language. And we started teaching how to actually code. And I remember creating a game. It was the best game ever, tic-tac-toe. You could do inputs and outputs, and you have winners. And so actually
Zeros and ones?
Zeros and ones.
Okay.
And it was just this moment of creation, and wow, I built that. And then also you can make something perform, and you can create this experience. I was just honestly captivated. I was wow, my like light bulbs went out, right? And that was also, computers and everything was just so new. And I remember getting my PC magazine after that. Like it was a moment. But then what really started to happen, I was in high school. I was a cheerleader. I'm in this room, and it's like cheerleader, you know, girl, all boys, like does not compute. Like it just,
Mhm.
I immediately felt like, okay, this doesn't belong.
So
Like
that was
I don't belong. Yeah,
your first time experiencing being the only woman in the room?
yeah. And I never thought about it until
Yeah.
that. And I don't know if I even thought like I'm the only woman in the room, but it was just like I don't like the way I feel. And maybe
Mhm.
I didn't know how to explain it, but it's just you look around and you're like,
Like you don't
okay,
belong
no,
kind of?
this is clearly not for me.
Mm.
There are a bunch of like geeks, although I define myself as a geek also, but at the time, that's just it's just the way I looked
Yeah.
at it.
Yeah. So, okay. So then did you stick it out or did that
No,
deter you from
no, I deter.
pursuing
It
that?
totally was like that's not me, and I finished the class. Everything's it's a little bit vague, but I finished it, but I was not interested anymore. And then I went straight to working. We didn't have like a ton of money. I didn't think like, oh, I'm going to go to these high Ivy League schools. It was just more like I've always worked since I was young, and you work, you go to school, and that's just the way you need to do. So I started working at an insurance company at the age of 16 and
Wow.
Farmers Insurance. I still have the same agent since I started that job. Yeah, no,
Do
it's crazy. Yeah,
you?
she actually sold the business and they to somebody else, and I'm still with them. So
Wow.
it's kind of crazy. And I would work in the office, and then I'd start writing the policies, and I was like really good at just getting done. So they gave me more and more paperwork, and like, Erica, you probably should get licensed. So I
Mhm.
went all the way to San Francisco at 18 years old, and pretty scary. And but I passed on the first time, and I became an insurance agent at 18, licensed. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I
What?
know. It's
I
kind of
actually
weird.
didn't know
You didn't know
that part
that?
of that story. Like,
Yeah.
wow, I
Yeah.
thought I
So
knew everything
Farmers
about
Insurance is
you.
like, yeah. So that was, and I would always try and like get everybody the best deal. And they're like, it was always interesting. But I was really, that was sales. It was, handling claims and handling people that were upset if they got in a collision. Like there was a lot of things I learned about just being a human. And
Mhm.
fast forward, I was in that job for quite a while, and I went to an insurance summit or something. I think maybe I was mid 19, and I was still going so I went to junior college. Sorry, going back and forth. I went
Yeah.
to De Anza College,
Mhm.
and I started taking courses. And I figured I'm not going to go to a university right away because I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what I'm good at. We
Mhm.
don't have a ton of money. I need to work. And then I started looking like you need to take 2 years of base courses anyways, and they're all the
Yeah.
same. So like, why am I going to spend all that money? And
Get your
so
prereqs out of
get
the
your
way.
prereqs out of the
Mhm.
way, figure it out. So and I still stayed at home, and I would just commute back and forth. And I went to this insurance summit, and I met this guy, Zane Giovanni. He always had like such an impressive name. I still think about it today. But he and I became friends, and then he offered me $1 more an hour. I was like,
That's big though.
I know. He's like, why don't you come
In
over
the
to my insurance
90s.
agent?
Yeah.
That was a lot. That was a lot.
Yeah.
It was a lot for me. So I said yes, and I winded up working in that office for about I don't know, a year. And great guys I was working with, these two agents, and that was fun. And then he had me go to this company called Pentagon Systems. They focused on printed circuit board manufacturing. He
Okay.
said, "Hey, Erica, you need to go over there and have the CEO sign these insurance papers for, I don't know if it was his car or his house or whatever." I go in there and I'm meeting with the CEO. I'm like, okay, this is interesting. Can you just
At
sign right here?
19.
I was like
Yeah.
19. And then I was in his office, and he started talking to me like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm thinking about maybe engineering. He's like, well, you know what this company does, right? And he's like, you might be interested in understanding this field a little bit. It's circuit boards and wiring boards, and it's basically a PCB board that's in a computer, and you could figure out all these resistors, capacitors. It would be amazing. And so I was like, ooh, this sounds cool. And then I was like, I'm gonna take this job, right? I don't know. And then he's like, and we'll give you a wardrobe. And I was like, okay, a wardrobe. Why do I need a wardrobe? And then I ended up being the receptionist. I thought I was maybe gonna
Oh,
get the other job.
what?
I know. So it was
That's like a
a little.
bait and
I
switch.
know. And so, but he gave me $500 to like look really good. And there's this woman, Jasmine, who I'm still friends with today, Jasmine Castro, love her. And it was her job. And so I was taking over her job. And so she was going to be in the back office. So I remember just she took me shopping and and she said, this is how you do the ropes. And I was like, okay, I have to water the plants. I have to flip the calendar, make sure he has water. I have to wash the glasses and do all these things.
Yeah.
I was like, even though I worked as an insurance agent, I wasn't used to catering to someone. It was different. And I remember in the early days, he came in and he was not happy that his cup had soap in it because I guess I didn't like really clear it out. And I also there was a ficus, and he's like, the leaves are falling off. I
had
failed.
One job,
I had one
Erica.
job. And I was like, wow, well, you didn't have a dishwasher, you have to get the soap out in the water. It takes a couple rinses. So, as a kid, I washed a lot of dishes, and that's why I don't like to do it now. That was like my chore.
Well, you're an instant gratification person too. So you're probably like, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's good enough. I can see that.
And then, he was kind of upset. And then also I was killing the plants. And, I remember he shook the ficus a little bit and even more leaves fell off. And I just started crying. And I was like, I suck at my job. And I think I let some phone calls go through that he should haven't gone through. And yeah, I was a mess.
So you didn't last in that position very long.
No, I was ready to quit. And I was like, I can't do this. No telling to Jasmine. And I was like, I got to leave. And then it was interesting being at the front desk. You talk to everybody, right? You talk to the engineers, and they're there in the front desk talking to you, and they're just like, and all of a sudden you become therapy, and they're telling you about stuff. And you're like, okay. So I remember talking to this guy, David Kern. I actually try and find him. Maybe I'll find him one day. He's like, Erica, don't quit. Just don't quit. He's like, I got an idea. I'm in sales. I need help with the bill of materials. We call them a BOM. And I was like, what's a BOM, right? It's a bill of materials for a printed circuit board. You need resistors, capacitors, all these materials. He's like, I don't know. I could use some help. I'm like,
with the bombs.
With bombs. I'm like, okay, we're going to learn what this is. And so I winded up moving from the front desk, and they got somebody else that was better qualified. And I started learning about parts. And then I started getting to the back where you'd have a stencil, you'd have a printed circuit board, and you'd have a stencil that you go over. And so where all the parts would go. And so all of a sudden I'm in a white lab coat. I'm feeling even more cool. And I started just buying the materials, understanding how to use them. And then I navigated to the room where then after you get the board and you program the board, then there's all these engineers that do all the routing. And I just was like amazed by what they were doing. So just pure curiosity, but they're all men again in the room. And I was just, and then they started talking to me. It's interesting. You feel alone, but then everybody's like, what are you doing here? Right. And so everybody kind of wants to talk to you too, and they want to kind of help. So that was my first experience of mentorship and sponsorship, because Shahid Khan, Asif, like I remember all of them, and actually still chat with them ever so often. They are the ones that encouraged me to go after engineering, and they started just showing me little parts of how things worked, and I would just be on their shoulder.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the things I love about you, and I think a lot of people do who get the opportunity to work with you, is your curiosity. You're always wanting to learn something new and push yourself and, attain new skills or upskill if you already have the skill, right? And so when you're going through this whole journey of figuring out that you're not a good receptionist. But you got a new wardrobe again. You got a new lab coat, which is cool. And that fit better for you. That's true. Literally and figuratively. But you were still going through college. So you finished De Anza while you were still there?
I was going, and then I transferred to West Valley.
Okay.
After that too. No, I went West Valley, then De Anza.
Okay.
Yeah, I finished off in De Anza. I went to West Valley because I just thought the area was so beautiful, and I always wanted to go to school there, which is interesting now. I live close to the area. So
So two community
colleges. Yeah. Okay. I was just like, why not try different ones? And yeah.
So then you finished your prereqs. What was next for you? Like you said, not Ivy League, but was a university in your eyesight?
Yes, I knew I needed to do that because that was the logical next step. So it's not like I had great grades. Like I was always like a C student, but I was doing pretty good in my prereqs, but I was really good at math. That like always got A's. Like that is where I did well. Thank you.
4.0 student.
Although I don't, some people are like, I thought you said you were good at math, and sometimes I'm not. But anyways, it's the problem solving, the puzzle about it, there's one answer, it's all that factual
I've
stuff.
always loved math too. And like my favorite thing is that it's a universal language. You
Yeah.
know, it's numbers are numbers. The math's the same in
Yeah.
every language.
There's no
So
debate.
that's a
This is how it
beautiful
is.
thing.
Maybe there's a debate how you got the answer, but there's no debate.
It's more black and white.
So I think that's why I liked it too. But yeah, so I started looking around colleges and I didn't know where to go. And I just said I should just tour campuses because I heard that's what people do. So I remember going to Stanford and going to Santa Clara. I'm like, wow, big, beautiful schools. And then you start looking at the price tag. You're like, damn, that's a lot. How am I going to do it? And I think back then there also wasn't this, everybody talks about school loans a lot. It's like either you can afford it or you can't. And I was like, there's no way. Like I can't afford it. Parents can't afford it. And the business also for my dad, it was not doing well. It was going down. My mom was doing her Mary Kay. They were making ends meet, but I also had 2 sisters. There's just a lot. And that's when he got into real estate, which is a separate thing. I'm also into real estate. So he was always him and his best friend Les, they've always self-made and figured things out. But I remember just walking, honestly, the halls of San Jose State, and because I was close, and I walked the halls, and I remember there was this big, huge, bright, shining, brand new building, and it was just made, and I was like, that's just beautiful. You like shiny things, obviously.
I love sparkly things.
So when you see something new, you're like, what's that building? I'm going to go into that building. That seems like that could be home for a bit, So I just walked into the halls of and it happened to be the engineering building.
Okay.
So I walked in the halls in the engineering building, and there was this glass case. I mean, in my eyes, I think it's probably like light shining all around it, like, God, higher being or something. But I remember looking at it, and it was like women in engineering with Society of Women Engineers, or it was some organization for women. And I was like, wow, maybe this is what I should be doing.
Yeah.
And so that's literally how I chose my major.
Wow. You went from being the only woman in a computer class in high school to seeing a whole case showcasing women that are banding together and diving into this industry and like inspiration, like crazy. So you decided to go through it. How long did it take you through your course of college to graduate?
Yeah. So I actually applied for civil engineering because this is my logic that I was like, oh, civil engineer outside civil doing bridges. I was an outside girl. So, but quickly it was near the dotcom days, right? Or mid 90s, mid 90s. That's when it was. And computer engineering was, and software, it was just peaking. So I decided to choose computer engineering. Again, it's hardware and software. I don't know what the difference is. Pick a major that gives me both options. And I knew some hardware side because where I worked before. So I just hustled and worked 30 hours a week. It took me 7 years to graduate. Almost dropped out multiple times. The electrical engineering courses are freaking hard. And those were the ones where you would see a lot of people drop like flies. And I met this Society of Computer Engineering. And again, it was that sense of belonging and community. And I met a whole bunch of men that were part of it, obviously, because it was in the majority of the classroom. And then I met one woman, Krista. She's still my best friend today. And we had slim pickings. That's one thing we talk about. But we're in each other's weddings and very close. And that's how that got me through college. I mean, we'd stay up in that room until 2 a.m, just whiteboarding solutions and just all trying to pass. We were all just in this hustle mode of some people worked. My friend Krista worked at Safeway. She'd come in it's okay. She'd come in very angry. Everybody laughs about it. She'd be so upset. She's so tired. She's like, I'm tired. And she just put her head on she'd take a nap. I was like, at first, that's how I met her. I'm like, I don't know if I want to be friends with her.
She's sleepy.
She's sleepy and cranky. But we were so exhausted. We were just trying to get by. And we all came from different backgrounds of not, just trying to figure it out. So, but we graduated. 2000 was the year. I graduated. We made it happen. And
what an epic time to graduate and get into the dot-com era, right? As software engineers. Wow.
So it was crazy.
You graduated, and obviously like this community that you're talking about, like this is the whole thing of what is bringing you to this point is
Yeah.
community is so important to you, and you've found those communities along the way. So like kudos to your classmates and Krista. I've gotten to meet her.
You know
She's
her too. You went to
amazing too.
Paris and yeah.
But yeah, like having them as kind of like a backbone for you and pushing you through
Yeah.
even the times you want to quit. That's when you need community. That's why it's important. And so you made it, you graduated. Yay, good job.
Now what? Now-
Then what? Yeah, exactly. Now what?
I know. It's like, well, isn't that all you're supposed to do? Is like I made it, and just on the community aspect, John and Brad and Aaron and Conrad and Krista, we are a core group, and we still get together, and we have a group chat, and we act like kids, and that's what's nice about your college friends. You can kind of like go back to that younger version of yourself, and we get together all the time. So still a strong community that I have with them. But yeah, you graduate and you're like, okay, now you got to use your freaking degree. Like, what are you supposed to do? I was working at a startup company at the time. It was called Remark. It was discussion boards. So that was when the internet, if you could put a website together, you were a genius. I mean, everything. You had Webvan, you had Lycos, you had Alta Vista, you had all these search engines that were just being built like right before like Google. Look it up today. I mean, it was just a crazy, crazy time. And right when I was, before I had graduated, I don't know. I think I was just like, it was time for me I wanted to make more money. And I was like, I need more money to make ends meet. And I remember getting this job where I applied for it, and I would apply for jobs and I wouldn't get them because having to do an interview is a skill. It takes a ton of practice, and no one practiced. We didn't have mentor. Like today, I'm like, wow, there's so many resources. Use all of them, but I failed so many interviews, and I finally went on this one interview. I'm like, this is the internet like time, and I was in school, and I didn't know how to build a website, but I was like, I'm gonna just learn. And so I built a website. It is the crappiest thing that you would ever see in your life. I'm not a UX person or designer, but I built it. I was able to show it. And I went to an interview, and they said, what skills do you have? I go, well, I'm majoring in computer engineering, it's hardware, software, but like I built something. Do you want to see it? And
they didn't ask you to? You just did
I
that
just
on
did
your
it.
own?
I just did it on my own because I failed all these other interviews. I'm like, what do I need to do differently? I got to show them that I can build. You got to
Bring
show them
something to the table.
You got to bring something to the table. Like, why am I going to trust you? You haven't even graduated. So I had not graduated college yet, but it was this last year, but I wanted to make more money and stuff. And it was just hot. And I was like, I feel like I'm in the wrong space. And I showed him, and he's like, wow, I was super impressed. I fucking fooled them. I was like, I just built this in the last, the last couple of weeks. I'm like, and I was like, oh my goodness, I got the job. It worked. And then I was like, I don't know what the frick I'm doing. And I got the job, and it was a startup company that was, again, it was almost like white labeling websites. So you put discussion boards, like topics, and you'd white label it on all these different companies. So I winded up got the job. I wound up being a front end engineer, which I am horrible at doing. So I had to learn like Perl and all HTML, CSS. Like I just wasn't really great at that, and I didn't go to school for that. But I figured out I'd stay up until 2, 3 in the morning to just make it happen.
Back end.
But I like the back end. I like how the things connect. But now the tools are so much better now that you could just do full stack and you learn a lot. But that's how I got the job, and then I graduated from San Jose State, and I worked on my senior project, working with some of the tools that, sign on and all the stuff I learned in that job. And they're like, wow, you got this senior project. And so I was a little bit ahead of the game, I felt, when I graduated, because I was working in industry at the same time when the industry was changing. But
Real life experience.
Yes. Yeah. So I was already working from that point on.
Yeah. Okay. So then you graduate. How long did you stay at that company before you needed to make more money? Because that's always important.
Because because I was used to not having, I mean, we had money, but we didn't have a lot of it. And I was always conscious about the dollar, and that's how I'm going to make ends meet. So I heard that people in the tech industry started making more money. It's like, oh, they're making like $60,000. I'm like, ooh, that, I need to go after that. I need to make that type of money.
Yeah.
And so I winded up working there. I tried to interview, and I still wasn't great. So I was like, you know what? I need to start working on my own craft and getting better at it, so I can get those higher paying jobs. And I asked my boss, Mike Belshie, who I'm also very close with still to this day. I said, hey, I want to have this project and I want to work on it myself and I want to show that I can build and I just want to get these skills. He's like, great, Eric, I have a board meeting that's coming up and you're going to need to understand how all the systems work. It's a mail server because getting email and calendar on the web was like, that was revolutionary at the time. Like, oh my gosh. So you got to show how it's performing, how it's doing, get all these reports, understand how the systems and the metrics. And that's why I'm a big metrics person. It always started early on, measure every single click and, rendering everything. So I worked hard, got the project done. And it was a challenging project for me at the time, but I did it. And back then you didn't have a lot of disk space. So I was a rookie and
Disk space?
disk space,
What do you
like
mean?
actually hard drive. We didn't have the cloud.
Is it like a floppy disk?
There's probably a little bit of floppy though. Yeah.
know.
So yes, I think we were well, we did have. It wasn't floppy, but it was like the harder disk version of it. We would pass those around. Yeah, it's very. I still have them. Actually, my friends from San Jose State. We took pictures. He's like, look what I found. So we kind of laugh because that's how we transfer data and stuff around. Yeah, you will not a lot of people know that, but the world has come a long ways. So we didn't have the cloud. And so you would transfer stuff to like basically a disk or a hard drive, and that's how you uploaded your code.
Okay.
So yeah,
I got
you
it.
following?
Kind of. Well, okay. This is a non-engineer trying to follow engineer talk, so I will clarify a few things along the way.
Yeah,
But
that's fine.
That makes more sense.
You can ask all the questions. But it was, I guess, probably the task was also a lot larger to do a backup back then. So I didn't check in my code often to the build system. That is the central place for everybody checking their code, and it's backed up, and so you don't lose anything, right?
Right.
So I didn't do that often. Number one, failure number one. Failure number two, I was like, I don't have enough local disk space where I'm doing my work. I'd run out of space. So then you'd constantly be deleting stuff and clearing stuff. So I went into my root directory, which is like bad. I don't know what the frick I was thinking. But I did RM minus RF. And if anybody in engineering knows that, they're like, oh, that's an oh shit, oh fuck moment, which means basically you deleted your entire code base in a forced delete. Like it is gone. It is
Forever.
No
recovery.
Like it is gone. And yeah.
Like all the work that you were doing.
And this project is due like, tomorrow. And my stomach just like sank and I told my friends, my colleagues, I'm like, oh my God, it has to be somewhere. Everybody's like searching my computer. Are you really fucked up? I'm like, yeah, I know. And so, so then I remember I have to tell my boss what happened. And this was in San Francisco at the time. And they were all open desk spaces. And, I remember walking to him and I remember the hallway looking literally dark. Like I feel like it was just caving in, and I'm like, I have to tell him like I screwed up so bad. And so I went over to him and I said, hey, Mike, that project you wanted done? Well, I deleted the code and he just looked at me with utter disappointment. And I thought this was going to be and I was like, I just started crying. I literally almost crawled underneath his desk and but then I kind of looked, I don't know how small I seemed at the time, but I felt really small. And I remember just like looking up at him and being like, I'm like going down in my chair even because I still remember the feeling. And I remember I just said, I'll get it done in 2 days. And he's like, whatever, this project took you like 2 weeks to build. Okay. So he just said, okay. And
gave you the chance.
He gave me a chance. And I stayed up. I didn't sleep at all. And I just coded. And it's interesting when you code something and the second time around, you actually code kind of embeds in your brain too, like your memory, which that was my backup, I guess, my memory.
Yeah.
So I was able to code it and do it with less bugs and I was able to get it done like in 2 days. And he was
just by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my
I remember asking like, remember this? I asked you about this question. Is this how it works? I think I'm sure I asked tons of people for help. But I did code it by myself and deliver, and my colleagues were amazed. He was amazed, and I was like ready to breathe.
Yeah,
I was like,
you're like, I need a nap.
I need to sleep.
I'm
now.
like, Krista, we need to go have a nap together.
Exactly. But it was a moment where it's like I thought I was gonna get fired. I thought I was an idiot. I screwed up. I did all the things, and when you're so young at that time, and it's like I worked so hard to get to where I was.
Mm-hmm.
I worked so hard, really, really hard.
Yeah.
It was painfully hard. And I didn't want to lose it all. So that I survived. And then he went to a startup company, and it was called Good Technology. And he called me and he said, Erica, you want to join the team? And I'm like, you know, like me,
The one who deleted all my
did this
code.
like shitty thing at this company. And he said, yeah. And I think that was my first moment. I had failures in my life, but that was the one that, when you have that really, really, really big failure, and it hurts and it stings, and how you recover
Mm-hmm.
is actually the most important thing. It's not the failure. It's how did you recover post that failure, and how did you move forward?
Yeah,
And
and
that was
acknowledging it in the
acknowledging
moment.
it and being like, and owning it and
Yep.
saying it, and how do you come out of that? And so, and those are the most difficult times looking back. It's like, wow, but it was so hard to act in that moment, be different, know that you'll come through it. And sometimes you just got to go through failure. And when you go through failure, the other side could be so much more beautiful.
Yeah.
And I got that job, and I ended up being at that job for 7, 8, 9
At
years.
Good Technology.
Yeah.
Well, because he saw that
Yeah.
side of you where you have that grit to like power through,
Yeah.
like, hey, check it out. I mean, crawled under the desk almost
Yeah.
and cried, but
Begged for
at the same
forgiveness.
time, you're acknowledging like, hey,
Yeah.
I screwed up, I
Yeah.
fucked up.
Yeah.
I'm owning it, but I'm going to fix it. And that's the type of people you want on your team that are going to acknowledge the fact that they made a mistake and they want to learn from it. And it came out better
Yeah.
than it was before. So like, of course he's going to want to bring you along, but those moments, I feel like you said, you're like, are you sure you want me? You have that insecurity built in you, but you need people in your life along your journey to kind of build you up and bring you along. Like, I see something in you, right? Like you do that for me all the freaking time. So I love you. But it's a thing. Like that's how people survive in this life and become successful and get to their next phase. So he brought you along to Good Technology, and you were there for quite a while, but there was also a pivotal moment while you were there where you actually changed the course of your career in a way from being an IC, an individual contributor as an engineer, to management. And that was amidst something that was pretty intense in your life at the moment. So I want you to kind of uncover that.
Yeah. So Good Technology, it went through a bit of a pivot where it was, media at first, but they went into the mobile phone space, and this was before Android or iPhone. And the idea was that if you could get email and calendar data on a mobile device, like a BlackBerry or Palm Trio or any of those devices, and I still have some of them today, that was just brilliant. We were changing people's lives. And so it was so revolutionary. It was ahead of its time. So I was a back-end engineer working closely with Microsoft Exchange servers that would listen to an advised notification like, hey, you got new mail. I'd take that, encrypt it, pack it up. We had the cloud. We had a version of the cloud back then. And then we'd send it over to mobile devices, encrypted in a secure way. So we had big customers like Cisco and Walmart. But what happened is anything I built, and at the time our capacity, this is where the numbers are so different. We would build our solution on servers behind their firewall on premise, and each server had 1,000 users. So the larger your company, you'd have system after system after system of computers there. And the code that I would write that would be deployed on prem for them, if it stopped, if it broke, guess what? Everything stopped. I mean, email stopped on their phones, right? Which is, you can't imagine, we take it for granted today that it's just working all the time, but it would break because I would write the software or other people would, and it was revolutionary at the time, so things would break. And I remember we had a thing, we would call it time bomb, where it's like, we didn't know, but the threads would all hang. If anybody knows threads, it's multiprocessing on a system. And all of a sudden, if they get locked up, the whole system would just sit there. But then if you reboot just like anything, oh, why did everything just fix? Well, you're resetting everything.
In the words of Sabri Tozen, dear friend of yours, amazing.
Reboot that shit.
Reboot that
Reboot
shit.
that shit. Rebooting for anybody always works. And you forget, you're like, just reboot, because reboot, it does. It resets the whole system. And so sometimes what would happen is we wouldn't know why everything would get stuck, and all the threads would hang. So we would create we'd call it time bomb, where it's like, hey, if you notice all the threads are hung up and they're in a stale state, then automatically reset. So we would automatically reset these systems, but anytime that would happen, well, that's kind of bad because it could give us a notification, hey, Walmart's servers are time bombing all the time. Like, oh crap, that's also not good, because if you do it too much, then you're not actually moving forward. But sometimes, most of the time it worked. So anyways, I started caring about how things works and weren't working for customers. So if something breaks, guess what? They want their IT person that's on premise to talk to the engineer that built this shit, right? They're pissed.
Fix it now.
Fix it
I'm
now.
paying you.
Everything's down. And so I started being on those calls. And then I knew the system so well. I even winded up traveling to Microsoft, Seattle at the time. That's another whole experience in itself, which I could talk about. But I started traveling. I started just being really close to the business. And everybody's like, wow, you really are good with customers. You know how to calm people down, and you also fix it. Well, because I needed to talk to them to understand what the problem was, so then I could fix it. So I was really good at fixing it. And then I became like a sustaining engineer, and I actually enjoyed that part of the business more, where it's like, hey, let's do that. So one thing that was a true transition for me that was organic was I started caring about the customer. I started caring about the end product. I cared about how it worked. And I just wanted to fix it, and I wanted to make it better. Like, there's nothing more frustrating than when you build something and it doesn't work for someone. You want to fix it.
Yeah.
So it's like that awareness. And so just tying all those things together. So I was good at that. And then I met my husband at work. He was in hardware, I was in software.
How'd you meet?
Oh, well, that's a whole nother story.
Oh, come on.
He's big in tech too, but
That's fun.
Yes,
It's a fun story.
I know, but he was in hardware, I was in software. He would start asking me lame questions over chat, AOL chat. And I was in the server room working late one night, and this is what you say, it's hot in the server room. But he asked me on a date, and I gave him Wednesday because you don't do Friday, Saturday because you're not quite sure. And I was single and I was having fun, and so.
Yeah.
But eventually we migrated to Friday, Saturday night date, and then the rest was history. But it was a good moment because we all maybe dated people we weren't proud of.
I feel like that's a movie next. Finding love in the server room.
But we had such commonality, and I think that's also, I mean, it's true. Like, who you decide to partner in life with is really important, and it's constant work. I mean, we have our ups and downs, and so that we can throw kids into the mix. We have 16 and 18-year-old now. I mean, we've gone through life together and changes, and you grew up together. So
were you allowed to be dating together, like while you were working together?
Oh gosh, no. Oh my God. Oh,
Back then?
So when I was, how much do I want to share? So we were, we were hanging out together, and it would start growing, but I did not want anybody to know we were dating, because I didn't want to it was a small office, and there's the perception, I'm a strong businesswoman. I'm not dating people at work, or get that perception you're sleeping around with people and you're in these positions. It's just, you don't want to be anybody to have any different perception than you are just a badass engineer and you're working. I don't want any. So I never told a soul, and I told him, don't you dare tell anybody. I was like,
and he's so sweet and quiet.
So
he's
nice.
Like, okay.
I don't think he wanted to either, because we were both just like, and then also you're dating, you don't know if it's going to work out. I mean, it's complicated, right? But we were in different teams. So that was helpful. And I remember, one morning I have to have my coffee, and I said, you need to get me coffee. Right. And so he got me coffee, Starbucks, and at Starbucks, they write your name on the cup. And it's, as I go into this meeting, I didn't even realize, and it was like Hiroshi, like off the cup, coffee cup, like, and I didn't even think about it. And everybody's kind of like, I'm just talking, and everybody's like, Hiroshi got you coffee this morning? No, yeah, didn't he get you coffee? She got everybody coffee.
I thought he got it for the whole office.
I was just like, I was so flustered. I was like, oh my gosh, they know we're together, and so I just played it off like, I'm sorry, he's so rude, right? So, so poor guy.
Cat's out of the bag now, though, at that point.
I was so paranoid. And then eventually, like, he asked me to get married, and I was like, okay, we probably should tell people. And so I told some people, and he told some people, and they're like, wow, Erica's engaged. And they're like, yeah, Hiroshi's engaged. And we're like, duh, like,
tie
those
it
two
together.
It's like, okay. So that's kind of, we didn't like, it wasn't a big announcement, then everybody
Yeah.
figured it out. Actually, Danny Shader, who was the CEO of Good Technology at the time, he says we were one of the best products he ever made.
Oh,
super
that's
sweet.
so cute.
He'll love that. He'll
Oh
love
my
that.
gosh, can we get like sound effects like, oh, like everybody?
Yeah,
Oh my
no,
gosh.
he was a remarkable CEO. Yeah,
Awesome.
amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah, that was probably one of my first. No, I talked about Mike, but like he was just a true, authentic leader that he got to your soul as a human. So he was fantastic.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so you went through 7 years, found your love of your life, got married, and then you had kids.
Yeah, then we had kids. So, oh my gosh, having I knew I always wanted to have kids. That was just, I grew up with sisters. I grew up with, my mom had a large family. I kids was definitely the thing that I knew I wanted, but I didn't know what that meant. So we had a baby, and I was pregnant, and it's not like you see a whole bunch of people walking around the office pregnant. Yeah, there's none. Literally,
Because you're one of
I
the
never
only
saw
women
one.
still, right? You're one of the only women still.
Yeah, there was only one woman I remember in the office, Trey. She was from Good. I'm still friends with her today, but I remember she was a runner, and she had a baby, and she would bring her breast pumps to work, and it was like you didn't have mother's room or anything. I mean, you're in the IT. You're not the IT closet in case someone come there. You're like literally in the room with the brooms and all the other stuff. Like that's where you're at.
The
or you
janitorial closet?
Janitorial. That's where you would go. And it's not like you take over a conference room, because conference rooms are used. So where do you go? You're going to the bathroom, or you're going to some closet that you can just find that is a safe place to go. But I remember she was my only representation seeing a woman do that. And she would run. I'm like, she's like working this big job, and she's like, milking, and she's like running. I'm like, who is this person? So I remember like that was my only glimpse of like, this is possible. And I was in a different office after that. Fast forward, we got an acquisition. This other company had acquired us. So all of us had split. Half went to Motorola, half of us stayed. And I got pregnant, and I was going through the halls. It's not like you had all these systems in place of maternity leave and rooms, like I said, or even feeling sick, or even like how far you're going to walk to the building. And, you have mother's parking now, all these things. And I remember working up until the day pretty much I delivered. And honestly, sorry for all that one dude that I threw up in his trash can on the way to because I couldn't make it. You got the morning sickness. You get all the things. So I remember just working till I was scared to like, I didn't know how to navigate. Like, do I leave? No one's telling me I could leave. And so and then I heard there was, what is it, disability that you get. And I'm like, what a horrible name also to call just because you're pregnant, you're, as well. And
like, I'm not disabled. I'm still fine to do my
functional.
job.
But then I was thinking I had it all mapped out. If I quit my job, this is how much I'm going to get from that paycheck, and which was the max. And so we also had just bought a house. And so all the money and we're 2 incomes, but we still, I mean, I have the same spreadsheet that I started when we bought our house. I still have it today, where I do checkpoints. And I remember having the smallest amount, I don't know, maybe it was like $10,000 in the bank at the time. And that was the only balance that we had to get us through. It was scary. It was like, we need money.
And security. You have a baby.
We have a baby.
Yeah.
So I remember I was like, I got to take off time to have it, right? It's like, so I took off time because I was about ready, and my water broke in Togo's. Yeah, I was getting a sandwich.
Oh my gosh.
So
did you get the sandwich though before you left?
And I was like, something like, what is this? And then he was like, I'm like, that's what that means. And so I know I tell my kids that, and they're like, that Togo's right here in San Jose. I'm like, yeah, that Togo's. I think I probably ruined Togo's for them for the rest of their life.
They don't even eat sandwiches. They're like, we're good.
I think my son likes Subway now. So, but yeah, I think that's probably what happened.
Anyway,
digress. So, we went to the hospital, and they're like, you're gonna have a baby. And I was like, it's like, I almost didn't believe it was happening, even though I was like Willy Wonka in the chocolate factory. So like short and huge. I couldn't even touch my
You're an
shoes. It
Oompa
was horrible.
Loompa. Are you saying you're an Oompa Loompa in that
I
moment?
was. I felt that way. I don't know. I'm sorry. I enjoyed being pregnant up to the first part, but not I like to run. I like to be active. My sister would come over and I am so huge. I can't do anything. It was hard for me. I didn't like it.
But you did it twice.
I know I did it twice. So, you forget, do it again. And you're like, oh gosh, that's why. Okay. So I winded up, I had a cesarean. It was an emergency C-section. That was also very scary. You're awake and everything happens, and that's not how you thought you would have a baby. Also, but it was emergency. The umbilical cord was around my son's neck, and they're like, every time he has a contraction, his heart rate goes down. So you got to choose: you're gonna have a C-section, or you want to keep on pushing. And I never actually pushed. Technically, so everybody wants to know, I never actually did. I wish I knew how it felt. Maybe not. Some people are like, you don't need to know that. But I do wonder. I'm like, you see these movies and you're like, oh, I never did that. So I had a cesarean and my sister was there and so was Hiroshi, and it was interesting. You're awake, you feel everything, kind of like when you get a root canal, you feel that pressure, but you don't. So you feel everything, you could smell. I remember the smell. And then my sister Jamie and my husband talking. You're out there. Honestly, you feel like you're like on cross or something. Like your arms are out, you can't move your arms, and everybody's looking at you. And they're just talking. And they're like, oh, Jamie, did you redo your makeup? And I'm like, what are you guys talking about? I'm here. I'm trying to have a baby.
I'm being cut open right now, and a human's coming out of me.
So it was scary. It was all surreal. And my son was born, and he was born blue. And it was the scariest thing because you don't hear that baby cry. And so they smack him, and he started breathing, and then he was fine.
Gosh.
So, but during that time, I took maybe 8 weeks off, and that was because I was like close to the max. It was 6 to 8 weeks, somewhere in between the max that I would get paid to have time off, and I didn't have any time off, or at least I wasn't educated of that I could. And I was at home. Hiroshi also took some time off, and I got a call from Good, and I was thinking, this is it. You've taken too much time off. I'm fired.
Yeah.
Right. Like they need me at work. We're a small company. Like this whole mother combo thing is, and they felt me maybe because I wasn't there. Well, in your head.
This is all in your head though.
Yeah. But I mean, I was like, I'm not needed and they need something else. And they're like, and so, but they called me, and it was another amazing boss, Edward Yim. He said, hey, Erica, we're reorging and we think that you'd be great to go into management. And I was like,
okay.
Oh God, I thought I was going to get fired. I'm like, what, you want me to be a manager? And he's like, you're already doing the job. You're leading the team. You care about customers, all this stuff. Like, I think it'd be great. So then I was like, I mean, I have pictures of being on the bed with my son, like in a cell phone, on my computer. Like, that's how crazy I was. And I was like, I'll be there as soon as possible. I was like, this is a moment. Like, I'm going back to work.
Well, you're taking on 2 brand new roles in your life at the same time.
Yeah.
Management, people management, and being a mom for the first time. Yeah. Like, how'd you navigate that? You just did it. You just pushed through?
Well, it's still hard to this day, I'll be honest, because every stage is different and your kids go through different things. But at the time, I almost... Also, I got excited that I got this job, but I had tremendous guilt. You have this bright, shiny baby that you're holding, and you're like, this is a beautiful thing. I should be spending as much time as possible, right? Like, that's what I should be doing. And I remember thinking, I think I have to quit. Because I also had my other friend, Krista, I went to college with, graduated, worked. She had kids too. She decided she's going to take a pause. And she ended up having a lot of kids, like 4 kids, and the other one was, they had twins on the 3rd try. I'm like, wow, okay, you got 4. Like that's a lot. That makes a lot of sense. So, and I just remember talking to my mom, and then I think this is where I love my mom very much, but I don't think I appreciated her as much until I had kids. And so I think that's, you realize what they went through and how they wanted to take care of you and all the sacrifices they made. So I remember struggling with her, and she's like, no, you got to go back to work. And she's like, and my husband's like, no, this is what you worked hard for. We will figure it out.
Yeah.
You work so hard, and you could do both. And my mom said something to me that I don't know, it stuck with me, and I don't know if it's logical or great advice, but she's like, do you remember anything when you were 1 year old? 6 months old? I'm like, no.
No.
No, she's like, okay. I'm like, all right, it's a baby. It's not going to remember. Everything's going to be fine.
Yeah.
That's like,
We'll just
look,
leave it at home. We'll come back
she'll
later.
take it.
No.
Like it was like some kind of guilt that I needed. I needed some crutch to be like, it's going to be okay. And then my dad and her said, you could drop off your son, we call him Seiji now, it's Lucas, to the house every single morning. We'll take care of it. So we were bus drivers. We'd drive all the way up to my parents' house on the hill, drop off the baby, go to work, another hour commute. I mean, we would spend like an hour and a half drop off. I mean, sometimes it would be 2 because then the baby's crying, you put him in the crib. But then my parents got all excited. They're like, oh, this is cute little baby. Wake up in the morning. Because I didn't want to wake them. The baby's still sleeping and put him in there. So they helped us a lot. And so that's how we continued forward, because I wasn't ready to do daycare right away. And knowing that my parents, my family, not everybody has that luxury, but that gave me the courage to be able to say, okay, I could continue on doing this, knowing that you have your family. So that's
it's another form of community, you had your student community, you have your family that's always 100% going to be there, right? Like hopefully you have a family like that, so you're fortunate, but that's another community moment where they brought you along and lifted you up. Like you can be a career mom, right? A career woman and a mom at the same time. And it's okay. And like you said, you have a different perspective and appreciation for your mom doing the same thing, raising you girls and being a badass Mary Kay consultant with her pink Cadillac. And like
she still has it.
She worked hard to get there, right? And you see it now from a different lens. And that's beautiful in itself.
And seeing my sisters, how they hustle, they're independent business owners. My older sister, my younger sister, she's a nurse. I mean, we all have kids, and we just hustled, and you needed family support, and that's what family helps you go.
So you've been through so many moments where community has uplifted you and gotten you through, and like all these pivotal moments of changing careers and changing jobs, changing roles, becoming a mom, all these things. In your career, you moved to management and you've stayed there.
Yes.
Since that moment. And so what did that progression look like? Because you went from, oh my gosh, they're going to fire me. Oh, wait, no, I'm a manager, to VP of engineering at LinkedIn. Like that's a huge jump and a decade plus of career time. But like, walk us through that a little bit of how that happened.
Yeah. So I got to director at Good. And again, the CEO, Danny, at the time, they heard of a company called LinkedIn. And at the time, again, it was always these moments. It's like social networking was like the hot thing. And they're like, hey, we're trying to build this network. It's called LinkedIn. And, do you know anybody that knows Microsoft Exchange servers and getting contact data and importing them? And it's like, that's what I did. Right.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was more of a consultation. And I always said yes to a lot of things because I was just curious. And I was like, ooh, what's going on with this space?
So they were going to pick your brain.
They were going to pick my brain. And I was like, yeah, you can pick my brain and I'll tell you how to do it, but you got to be careful. So it ended up being an interview. And I met David Hinkey, who's like one of my role models, one of the best engineering leaders that I ever worked for and with. And he's like, hey, do you want to work at this company? And I was like, I was scared. I was in this bubble. I was at this other company. What was it, 7-9 years? I think it was more closer to 9. I rose the ranks, got into management. And it's like, okay, am I only good in this environment? Could I go to this new environment where nobody knows me? I have no cred, in a new space. But then it challenged me to be like, if I can prove myself again here, then maybe I'm somebody. Maybe I am real. Maybe this is the thing. So I said yes to the opportunity, and they said, hey, you're running the growth team. I'm like, okay, what does that mean? You're going to build it. And then I didn't even know what a page key was on like a website. Like it was like bad. Like I didn't do front end, high process, a lot of users. And I think we were at 100 million or 150 million members of LinkedIn.
When you joined?
When I joined. Wow. So I was in charge of like signups, getting emails, getting everybody to join this network. That was my job, and build a team. So I hustled. I mean, and then I realized systems were down, systems were breaking. Monday morning peak traffic, everything would go down. So my job was to make everything secure and functional and sustainable and all those things. So I built the team, fast forward, I was at LinkedIn. I mean, I was at LinkedIn for 13 years, but I rose through the ranks and I transferred over at first as a senior manager, not a director. So I was like, oh, it's downgrade.
Downgrade, yeah.
That doesn't feel good, but I'll work myself back up. And so I winded up being there doing many different roles, learning a ton. I led the growth team for about, I believe, 9 years. Then I led the LinkedIn learning team, engineering team there. Then I led the LTS business, which is the talent side business of recruiting and jobs on LinkedIn. So I was able to move around, and that's a story in itself where like I asked for every position. It's not like, oh, you're given this. And I asked and I wanted to progress and I wanted to move forward. But one thing that I did feel when I went to LinkedIn early on was also that the numbers were not what I wanted, as again, that feeling as a representation of women working at the company. We were in the single digit percentages. And I remember Prachi Gupta and Florina, they were at the company at the time, and they immediately reached out to me like, oh my gosh, there's another woman here.
Another one of us. Yeah.
So they became my community right away. And then we just also realized we could do better. We could do more. And that's when the Grace Hopper conference, pointing over her over there, Grace Hopper, was started. And that was the largest women in computing conference celebration, some people call it. And I remember going to that conference and I was just amazed. I wound up speaking at the conference. I'm like, there's a lot of women in tech. We just need to hire differently. We need to find them. We need to recruit them. We need to train them. We need to do all these things. So then it
Just
became
the energy.
The energy. I was like, this is how I want to feel. Like, why can't we bring this energy back to work? And Kevin Scott, head of engineering at the time, he was so supportive. He's like, okay, you gotta figure it out. He's like, will you lead this for the company and show us the way? And I'm like, well, I don't know. I also want to be a woman in tech, and I got my job, full-time job. And so I treated it like any other project. And I said, hey, I want to lead this for the company. It's going to be 20%. I asked 20% of my job. I need money. I need all these things.
You came up with that.
I came up with that
stipulation.
Yeah, because I wanted to represent, because everybody says, I care about a company culture. I care about bringing the right people on board. I care about hiring. I care. But if you're not going to put your money where your mouth is, or you're not going to make it actually, it's not a volunteer effort. This is part of my job. I'm going to put time and effort. If you want to change the company and change the product, honestly, that you're building. I mean, your mission is, hey, you want to represent the entire global workforce. Well, guess what? The entire global workforce is 50% are women. So that's part of our mission statement. So he announced it to the whole company, and Jeff Weiner, the CEO, we had so much backing. So that's another realization, that when you start from the top and you have that support and you have your backing, so that I knew anything I asked for, anything I need, they got my back, and I know that they believe in this too. So that's how it just evolved. Yeah. And it's the only way it could be successful. Yeah. You can't, it's like grassroots and top down. It's like you need to come in the middle. So women in tech became a very passionate thing for me. And then I grew, and we had more leaders and functions, and it just really honestly took off.
I have to say real quick, proud of you and kudos to you for advocating for the 20% of your job being dedicated to this, because that seems to be one of those things that I think happens frequently for women, that we take on extra roles, and it's more of an extracurricular activity on top of your 100% day job, or you're getting performance reviews and evaluations, and they're not even taking that 20% of work you're doing into consideration for a promotion or a raise or whatever. But it is hard freaking work. It's exhausting work.
It's super exhausting if you're going to do it right. And it's not like, you also are creating awareness, and it's not about fixing the women or anything. It's actually fixing the environment. Also, male allies was such a crucial part of it. So actually them raising their hand and them wanting to be part of it too was how we revolutionized everything. It's like, how do you hire? Does compensation work? Is everybody looking at this in a fair way? You're not hiring just because you're a woman. You're hiring the best talent. You just need to look in different places to find it, and not just go, like, right? And so it's easy to find that dude in engineering. Like, that is easy. If you want to create that diversity, you have to work a little harder. But do not hire me just because I'm a woman. Hell no. And that actually pisses me off quite a bit, because I earned every part of who I am and where I'm at.
And you've advocated for a lot of change, for having diversity be something that people pay attention to, not for, oh, you need to hire a woman to check the box or anything like that. But even the way that the systems worked at LinkedIn, you've told me in the past, like you look as a recruiter, the first 2-3 pages are all men. But you're looking for an engineer, it should be representative of.
Well, we changed the product. I mean, think about it. We have a certain amount. I mean, now LinkedIn has 1 billion members, over 1 billion members. But when you have a recruiter product and you're searching, to your point, engineers, and you just put in that search algorithm and you see the first page, it's like, it's all men. So, but if you look at the overall population of how many engineers you have, well, guess what? Maybe it's 60-40. We're not where we want to be
20-80.
yet. 20-80, whatever it is. That first page that you render better be representation of that. So this makes you start thinking of the products you're building and who's going to start thinking about that besides the people that are living that. And so that's why you need women and diverse people at the table actually coding, creating those algorithms. Even sexual harassment and messaging, when LinkedIn started doing that. I went to Grace Hopper and I showing these dudes, like, look at this shitty stuff that I'm getting from these random dudes. And they're like, I'm not getting that. Well, yeah, of course you're not getting that. Yeah, I'm getting that. So what did they do? They started changing a lot of their algorithms, started paying attention to it. One of an amazing engineer, Grace, she was in the team at the time, and her and I connected really well. And she's like, finally someone cares about this. Because when you feel it, and you only feel that when you have the right representation, that's what it's about. That's what it's about. So I've been just always a huge advocate on just trying to get it right. I mean, there's so many studies out there too, and people on the color of their skin and products where it's just like, you haven't thought about everybody, accessibility. I mean, there's just, you need that. You need that perspective, and you're not going to get it if you're not that perspective. So it's just, that's how it works. So I'm just crazy passionate about that. I've always been.
You need to be passionate in order to make change. That's where change comes from, right? Like passionate, obsessed, whatever we want to call it. We've talked about that a few times, but that's the beautiful thing is the women in tech community that you were able to kind of build up. It wasn't just, hey, let's have a place for women to come and eat lunch together.
No, it's a movement.
Let's look at how we're building our products. Let's look at how women can have more influence. Let's look at hiring differently. Like, you really changed the game when it came to that. So proud, be proud.
But it took a whole bunch of women and men all believing in that. And so I'm really proud of the work, and it's still going strong today. We went global, and it's been fantastic. I mean, Sarah Claddabuck, her and I going into India. I mean, we went everywhere. I mean, we learned cultures too. So I'm really proud of it. Met a lot of people inside LinkedIn and outside. And I think that's an important thing outside of LinkedIn. Companies, you leave companies, but it's the community, whether it's in the company or outside the company, you need both. So I'm really proud of the culture and community we created outside of LinkedIn. And because you need that outlet, and also just to be intelligent, like, how I have this person in my network. How are you doing business over here?
Right.
This is how I'm doing it at this company. And so you need that type of network to actually be stronger and smarter at the job that you're doing and function.
Learn from each other, elevate each other.
So it's always been, it's in my blood. It's in my blood. It's always,
truthfully.
And it's always been that way since when I started. Just that's how I survived. My community is how I survived.
Truthfully, and like, it's a testament to the fact of how successful you were in building that and creating that space for so many people. Because, like, I personally, when I joined LinkedIn, I joined as your assistant. I became a program manager because you embedded on me, gave me opportunities. But one of the very first things when I started working with you, you're like, hey, part of my job is leading women in tech. So you should come along, sit in these meetings, listen to kind of what's going on. And I was like, I'm not a woman in tech. I'm not an engineer, so I don't belong. You're like, hang on. Are you a woman? Are you a female? Like, in life? Are you in an engineering organization at a tech company? Yes, you don't have to be technical to be a woman in the tech field. You don't. So you do belong. So you gave even somebody like me that sense of belonging, and that passion came along with it, where I'm just like, hell yeah, I want to be a part of this.
You were great.
And there's so many people just like that you've touched and influenced, and you've had the opportunity to kind of bring more and more people into the mix in different ways, different aspects. Like, how can program managers support? How can technical program managers? How can admins? How can whoever get involved? So it's beyond that. And like you said, it's internal, external. But the biggest thing for me is when you left LinkedIn, which was a year and a half-ish ago now, 2023. 2023. Wow. That's crazy. Okay, anyways, crazy time. When you left LinkedIn, every one of those people, I won't say just women, because allies too, who were involved and invested in women in tech and what you built, they were devastated losing you. But they've never lost touch with you. They've still reached out to you beyond that, asking for advice and guidance and mentorship. And hey, I have this opportunity. What should I do? Should I take it? You know, you are a beacon of hope for so many people, and you've left that legacy. So that's where you know you were successful in building what you've built. You're like the Gloria Steinem
Oh gosh, no,
of tech, you know,
nice
it's
try.
or the Telly Whitney, or you know, the Grace Hopper, that
I
kind
got
of
to
thing.
sit
So
by their sidelines, or you know,
Yeah.
they paved the way to give us actually Telly Whitney, which I mean, I saw her at the Grace Hopper conference and just in awe of her. So she's been on the podcast, and now I'm helping her do her launch party at my house. I mean, now we're like super good friends. She's amazing.
Yeah, she's got a
amazing.
book coming out on the
Oh,
thing.
yeah.
So
more,
like to
stay
wrap on this though, it's like you built this, you left the company. Leaving the company was a hard decision all in itself, right?
Yeah.
Like, talk about that just a tiny bit of leaving the company, because I know women in tech was one of those heartstrings that pulled.
Yeah. So thank you for that. And thank you for coming along with the journey. And that's why we're here today, because I think we went through a lot of life and growth together. So super thankful for that. Yay. Stretch. We're a little farther apart than we usually are.
Yeah.
So yeah, you get to this point, you know, when you're at a company, 13 and a half years is a pretty long time. And I did different roles, and I always wanted to learn and grow. And so there just came to a certain point where I just wasn't learning the same. I wasn't evolving the same. But it was my identity. It's like, Eric, you're VP of engineering. You earned that seat in who you are. But I changed. I evolved. I was like, what you enjoyed at this particular time in your life, LinkedIn is amazing. It shaped who I am. I love it. I'll be always grateful for that company and the connections and the people and everything. It's just, it's ingrained in me. But I evolved. I needed something different, and I needed to have a new experience, and I didn't know what it was, but I wasn't fulfilled in the same way. And it's very complex, and I will be honest, I'm still unpacking it because it's been only a year and a half, but I knew that I wasn't, you know, when you're just not enjoying it the same. And then when you also have kids that are 16 and 18 that, you know, they're slipping through your fingers and you only have so much time. And I was like, oh my gosh, I had nannies. I worked and I worked and I worked, and did I miss out? And then that happens, and you start getting, you just start getting scared. I mean, and I'll be 50 next year, and you know, you think about mortality, and you start thinking, it's like things happen. And then, so that was, there's all these buckets and such. And then I happened to get skin cancer, and that was like super scary. And I'm like, what the hell? I'm like part Latin, and I would tan, and I looked good. I'm like, why all of a sudden do I have cancer? And that was scary. And then literally nothing like cancer, like smack middle in your face. Like literally I had it on my nose, 11-millimeter hole. And I had plastic surgery. I was close to almost losing my nose if I didn't act quick enough. It was squamous carcinoma, but that's another thing. Get your checks. If you see anything that's wrong, you're your best advocate for yourself, like with your health and your professional life, your personal life. So that was super scary, and that was wide opening. And there's nothing like, wow, I don't even look like myself. I mean, it was scary. And then also thinking, is this thing going to go away? Is it always something going to be part of me, or am I going to die? I mean, a lot of people have skin cancer, but it was an aggressive one. And so I looked pretty messed up for quite a while, and I was
Beautiful.
I was trying to go back to work, and everybody's like, what are you doing here? And I had like Vaseline all over my face. I'm like, I'm fine, right? So it's like, and I remember some people coming up to me, they're like, I've had skin issues. I've had a whole thing happen to me. And some amazing people like, Eric, I've been there. You need to go home, and you need to go rest and take care of it. And it's like, you know, it's just, it looked hideous, and I felt hideous, and it's nothing like everything crashing down at you at once. And I'm like, you know what? I got to do something for me and have the courage. So I was really scared to quit and leave a company. And I think everybody expected me to go be this CTO or head of engineering or some CEO, whatever, you know, that's the path that you must go, Erica. Like
that's the next step in the ladder.
Next step. Like that you fought hard for women in tech, and like, what do you mean you're going to take a break?
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm exhausted, and I don't know what I want to do anymore. Like, how does that? It was a scary scary, scary place.
No, you're human. You need a break.
But that's not how I grew up. I mean, I worked hard. I always made sure I had money. And it's like, you don't have a paycheck. My dad would be like, you're never quitting your job until you have the next job, right? And it's like, I had to go against every fiber of my being of that told me that this was the expected thing for me to do.
Yeah.
To be like, I'm going to do this.
Yeah. You're listening to your body.
Yeah.
Truthfully at that point.
Yeah. I was listening to my body, and I left and I cried, and everybody, you'd go to people like, you'd have your pitch before, and people like, oh, what do you do? Nothing right now.
Yeah.
It's a weird feeling. And it's like, I don't know. I'm going to stay home. I'm going to, and then all of a sudden I'm going to get up to date on our estate planning. I'm going to remodel the house. I can't sit still. I'm going to do all these things. I need to be
She's a busybody.
Drop off my daughter for something. I'm going to pick her up at 2:20. I'm going to see what my son's up to. So I ended up traveling, I went to India. We went to Dubai. I went to Paris, went to Hawaii. I took my Airstream out with my son, and that's a whole story. That's a whole episode to talk about. But we went along the Oregon coast and caravaned. It was the most exciting experience of my life.
You were by yourself for a moment there too, self-discovery.
Well, he wanted to go by himself, and I was like, as a mother, I'm like, what do you mean? I want to go with you. And he's like, Mom, this is an independent trip, and I want to do it all by myself. His Subaru was all stocked up, and he was going to sleep in his car. And I'm like, but I have this beautiful Airstream. We're going to like go glamping. It's going to be great. What do you mean? And so I would just plant the seed, and he basically was like, one day he's like, Mom, okay, if you want to meet me along the Oregon, but I'm going to head over, to Arizona after this. And I'm like, okay, fine. So we followed each other, and there's a whole story where I lost a wheel on the road, but we kept moving. Airstream dented everything. We were just like traveling, and we'd even go to truck stops. And I was like, we can go to a campsite and we could sleep. And he wanted to sleep in his car because he's going to prove to himself that he's going to camp alone. So here I am. It was an interesting dynamic, but we made it to Oregon coast, and it was beautiful, and we had a great time. And he's like, I'm going to go. And I'm like, what do you mean you're going to go? He's like, I'm going to go this way, and you're going to. So it was like, do I go back? I've never went that far by myself.
Yeah.
And I've never been a solo. I need to be around people and community. That's how I thrive. Alone by myself with this dented Airstream that is this wheel stuck on bolts. I'm torquing every like 100 miles because I'm worried about the wheel falling off, and it's not an OEM part. Like, I've never made more friends with the folks working at the tire station more than that, because I got a flat, and it was like I was terrified, but I was like, I'm going to do this. And so I ended up moving along on this road trip, and it was the most liberating experience to be by yourself. I cried when he went that way. I went this way. And I made it all the way to, Cannon Beach. And I was alone, and it was the most beautiful thing. And that's where I started realizing, like, I want something more. And I miss my community. I miss my people. I have a lot of purpose. I have a lot of work left in me to do. I just need to figure out what that is. And so women still kept on calling me, had a lot of calls and all that. And so none of that went away. I'm like, okay, we need to create a community still. I can create it. There's no reason I can't create it. So I was on a run, and I was like, Humanize came up because I know I wanted to focus on women, but anytime I was in a product meeting, we get all caught up in the product specs and everything. And I'm like, can you just humanize it for me for a second? Like, bring the human into the product of what you're building, because I don't know what you're talking about anymore. You're just talking about that color of that button, that screen. So that was something I always said. And it just came to me. I was like, humanize her. Like, let's
talk. It was like a tagline for you.
Yeah. So I was like, and also then let's also redefine success on our own terms. Let's like not go against those expectations, or who put values on you of what you should be, how you should be, or that company that is the walls that define you. You can redefine yourself. And when you have a community, and when you have people behind you, and you hear those stories, like you could do anything. And so that's where HumanizeHer came out, and you and I talked about it, and the women behind the scenes, we also brought them on board. It's like, I want to do this. Are you in? And everybody that I asked, they said yes. And so that's how it's been created. And we're a podcast, and a podcast is really about a force of frustration, where I want to break those barriers of the expectation for women, because we are put in that box, and it's a hard thing to break through. But I think the more stories we tell, the more experiences we share, then that is how you know that you could actually take that courage, that step of having courage to do the next thing and shatter those beliefs, shatter those expectations, and know that somebody has your back. So I feel honestly that I'm on the cusp, or I are building that platform for women. And I have big dreams that I want it to go global. I have dreams that the more women and stories across, and it's not just tech, it's across all industries, that I really feel that we are as good as the stories that we tell, and we're also as good as the community that supports us. So I want to build a community. I think about funding, and I want to give them money so they can be successful, because that's also important. So I got a lot of big ideas. I don't have all the answers. All of a sudden, I'm like in media, like, what the hell am I doing? Like, I don't know. I'm an engineer, so I get a lot of help, and I just bring a lot of smart people around me. And that is what my passion is right now. And I have the flexibility to be with my kids. I love my daughter, Sora. I'm happy that I hemmed her pants and for 2 hours last night, and can take her to school and tie her hair, this ribbon thing to make it super straight. It's like, she was like, Mom, here we go. I know you hate this thing, but it's like, I can be there.
You have the time for that
I have
now.
the time. And I think that's, as working moms, that is the flexibility of work, and choice is what you want. And so I want to keep on working. I got a lot of, I'm working, I would say, harder than I ever have in my life, because now you're CEO, now you're sales, now you're marketing, now you're engineer, now you're all the things, and I have a ton of people to help, but it all falls on you because you have this belief and you don't want it to go. But I have the flexibility of when I do that work, for the most part. I mean, some things you have deadlines because you're on a schedule, but I have pockets of flexibility. So yeah, I'm going to try and pick up my daughter from school as much as I can. I'm going to try and take her to that practice as much as I can. I'm trying to hem every pant, whatever she wants. I'm the worst seamstress, but I'm like, are they even? So, and my son, I'm racing now with my son too.
Yeah.
So,
you're doing all the things that you want to be able to do that you couldn't do when you were within corporate walls. But I think the whole point of this, right, of what you're making here, what you're creating, this community, this platform, is you are also empowering women by leading by example. Because the whole point of it is defining success on your own terms. So when you left LinkedIn, people are like, well, what are you going to do next? With the expectation it's going to be something big, some big title, some other big company. But you're like, it doesn't have to be that, because that's not what I'm defining as success in this moment. Success for me is spending time with my family where I need to be, building a community to help support women, elevate women's voices, give them funding, that's your mission, and that's what's driving you, and you're bringing other people along by leading by example. So thank you for doing what you're doing and being brave enough to take that leap and really focus on this being your life's work. This is your soul work.
And I think, honestly, elevating women's voices is going to be some of my best work of my life.
It is. It truly,
it
truthfully
feels good.
is. And like you said, we're not close to done. There's so much more to come with HumanizeHer. This is just the starting point with the podcast. So thank you to everyone who's listening. Erica, thank you for being the visionary and the leader, making this come to life. I'm grateful to be along the journey, and I hope everyone else listening is too.
Thank you, and great job being a host.
I know. That was fun, switching roles for a day. But
thank you.
But we'll switch back next time you see us.
All right.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you. That's a wrap.
HumanizeHer would not be possible without the crew behind the scenes. Ash Blodgett, our director and creative producer, for guiding us with expertise, creativity, and passion. Becky Davis, our talented director of photography and creative producer, for bringing our stories to life with stunning visuals. And Kristen West, our director of brand and design, for creating an emotional brand identity. To our listeners, we're on this journey together, and we love hearing how this podcast has helped you. It keeps us going, so please keep sending us your stories to her@humanizeher.com to be featured in upcoming episodes. And if you'd like to help us with this movement, please support by rating and subscribing. Until